Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where we are currently almost done with our turn here. I had us lined up, but for whatever reason, when I restart the game, the marker is wrong until I open the map, and then the marker updates and is correct. So I had to turn twice here. So you might be thinking, what's up with the electric charge? Yeah, that's what's up with the electric charge. So that definitely is a thing that is happening, and we're just going to get ready for this circularization burn. That's going to be in like a year, so that's not going to be a problem at all. Maybe a little longer than a year, actually. Let's just warp on forward, and yeah, our electric charge is full, as expected. So that's wonderful. Oh, right! Hang on. That action cannot be performed while you're time warping. Yeah, that's good. So I want to point something out here. Note this. There was a patch yesterday to KSP2. I don't think there was any news updates. Actually, yeah, there is an update on it here. So we can just go through this real quick. I'm a little surprised by this, but there was definitely a patch, and we can take a look at this. There's a couple of bug fixes. Moving stages around in the extended staging stack is difficult. Yes, that is true. Duplicated wheels, wings, and decouplers connected to physics-less parts will occasionally fall off. We experienced that. Loading a craft file with parts surface attached causes parts to show on the floor of the VAB. We didn't see that. I don't usually surface attach. Duplicating a stack in the VAB that includes a decoupler and an engine causes errors when launching the vessel. I'm pretty sure we ran into that one. So there's a bunch of bug fixes here. Removed the private division launcher, which is interesting. Private division, as far as I can tell, no longer exists. So there's that. But this is proof that there is, in fact, still development happening on the game, which is interesting for sure. Adjusted the default parachute deploy pressure so they'll deploy after re-entry regimes. That's probably good. Revised parachute drag numbers to provide a more consistent experience. Wonder what that means. Updated parachute safety and destruction algorithms so that parachutes will not deploy in situations where they will immediately break. That's a good thing. No doubt about that. A lot of parachute changes here, and that is absolutely fine. Now, to be clear, even with this patch, we still had the maneuver issue that I outlined previously. We're 91 days away. We can just resume this warp. But yeah, there's definitely been a patch in this time warp active here. Hang on. We just overshot this, didn't we? Probably because I paused the time warp. But yes, we definitely overshot it. Well, we can go around for another go. Okay, that's fine. We'll just warp around. I'm not going to pause it this time. So, lesson learned on that. But there has been an update to KSP2, which is absolutely fascinating. Now, on the day that this goes live, that update went up yesterday. Timing is kind of weird with YouTube, but yeah, that's the way that the timing works out here. The update went live yesterday as of when you're viewing this. So, there we go. And actually, as of the day that I'm recording it same day, although it's earlier in the day, obviously. So we're going to warp forward a little further here. We've got about 3 hours. Now we've got about 2 minutes. Let's warp forward a little further. I do like this time warp active here. That makes it a little bit more obvious that we're under warp. And I have run into issues before where I didn't realize that we were under warp, despite the fact that it was indicating that we're under warp. So that's a nice little QOL thing. But to be honest, I feel like they've got bigger problems to work on than little QOLs. Well, it's okay. We're going to burn out the rest of this tank on circularization. We'll go up to about 10x, and it should automatically unwarp us once we are close to burnout here. In theory. Yeah, there we go. Approaching partially out of fuel orbital event. So that sounds good. And we've got about 30 seconds to go here. In theory. But let's just run out this stage and light up our next stage. Fantastic. This should be pretty decent thrust to weight. As you can see, it is lower amounts of DV, but that's probably okay. And this is just going to be a fairly minute burn. And that's fine. Now, I'm wondering if this includes all of the stages here. Okay, we can see that this one is definitely different. Okay, so we can keep an eye on that. 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, our apoapsis and periapsis are broken, but that's fine. We don't actually need that indicator at this time. Hopefully they'll be unbroken by the time we get to Jool. So we're relatively circularized at this point. If we were to burn somewhere around here, what would we be at? Like, what would we be looking at here for an encounter? It's actually not telling us because I'm looking at the wrong one. I was looking at Elu there. Sure. We'd want to be out over this way, right? It's still not telling us. So that's exciting. It's because our maneuver is broken, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to try a reload here. I'm going to make a save right here. And I'm going to just try reloading it. And we'll see if that fixes this. Fingers crossed. Shouldn't be too long to reload. If this doesn't work, I'll try a full game restart, but hopefully that's not necessary. Okay, so here we are loaded. Apoapsis and periapsis are still broken. Sure. We can maybe try resetting Jool as our target as well. I'm not sure. It may not have been set as our target, actually. I think it wasn't. I think that got broken at some point. Okay, so we can see, yeah, now we're pretty far off here. That is not necessarily shocking. We're going to want to bring this around to, like... We're going to have to wait in orbit, it looks like. Okay, that's absolutely fine. We're just going to warp around to about here. Cool. So that shouldn't be a problem, in theory. So I'm noting that this is 15,494. This is only 4937. Now, we're going to need to land and take off on this 4937. So we might have to send a refuel mission, potentially. We'll see what we've got once we get to Tylo. If we need to send a refuel mission, we absolutely can, and that can be a disposable mission. We can, well... I'm just thinking about how it would work. We could send a crew member in it, or we could put an antenna on it and make it be uncrewed. But either way, this is a doable thing. So that would be fine. We'll just see what we've got as... For now, of course, our warp is going to be finished fairly soon, I believe. Yeah, we're definitely having some pretty long warps up over this way, but that's absolutely expected. 1,000% that is to be expected. Okay, so we're going to be dropping out of this warp fairly soon. And at the periapsis, I want to create a maneuver plan, and let's see what this looks like. I think this is still going to be a little bit wrong. Yep, we're going to have to do this a little bit later, but that's not surprising at all. So let's bring this out over here. A little bit more prograde. Getting closer. That's an encounter. Okay, is it a decent encounter? Kinda. Yeah. It kind of is. If we were to set Tylo as our target at this point, could we get a direct encounter with Tylo? What? Oh, there's a recover vessel button up here now. Interesting. Okay, that might have been there before and I just never noticed. Let's make some very minor tweaks to this if we can. Oh, that's radial. I want it to be... Yeah, this way. Okay, we need to... I think we're off on our inclination. Wait a second. That's a Tylo encounter. Okay. That should do. Let's align for that burn. That'll be in a while, but that's a really solid burn right there. 500 meters per second to get us into a Tylo encounter. We're probably going to have to do a pretty hefty braking burn once we get there. And we'll see how much DV we've got left at that point. It should be a decent amount of delta V, but we need to have enough to land and take off on all 5 of these engines, right? That is the primary concern as of right now. So we'll see how much that braking burn is. If we need to send a refueling mission out, we will do that. In order to do that, we will drop the engines and the landing apparatus, and we'll probably reduce the weight a little bit up here as well. And then we'll just dock them up in Tylo orbit, and we'll refuel like that. And then we can re-dock it after we lift off, possibly refuel again, and then head back. That would be the overall idea for that front. Let's warp forward. We're going to have to hit this pretty accurately. So that's going to be a thing. No doubt about that. We're going to need to go into Jool here. And then into Tylo, which is going to be really hard to do while we're warping. So let's just give this a moment. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty long warp. That is to be expected. But yeah, we're going to have a really hard time getting over to Tylo here while we're warping. So let's just let this be for the moment. We'll get through this warp. We've still got another year to warp, apparently. It's a lot of years. But we're coming up on it. We can see ourselves right here. Perfect. Okay, so we've got about 3 hours at this point. I want to head over to Jool proper. This isn't exactly Jool. I want to head over to Tylo at this time. Okay, so we want to start this burn, and we want this to be quite accurate. So it's going to be about a 27-second burn. Let's warp forward a little bit here. 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. 20. 10. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay. Commencing burn. If we can bring this in a little closer to Tylo, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but I wouldn't mind doing that on a braking burn either. That would be fine. The real question is, do we have to bring in a refuel? And I think it's probably not a bad idea. Although we probably should have parked the refuel here first, in retrospect. Our Kerbals are going to have to wait here for a while. Luckily, they don't mind that. But in reality, you're going to want to put your refuel there first, and then bring in your people. Because, you know, you've got things like food and life support to worry about. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that. Okay. I don't know if we're actually in this orbit or not, because we're not actually projecting forward. So what we need to do at this point is get into the Joolian, the Joolian sphere of influence here. So we're going to warp to here. We need to get into the Joolian sphere of influence, and once we are there, then hopefully we'll be able to see whether we have a Tylo encounter. We should. This has gone up to 7,000 meters per second. Okay. That's definitely more. But the real question is, what's our braking burn over Tylo going to be? I have a feeling it's going to be pretty significant. So let's put ourselves in a bit of a parking orbit, and then once we're there, we can make a determination as to whether we're going to go forward with the landing or the refueling plan. I want to do one or the other for sure. And it's likely to be the refueling plan if we have burned enough fuel. Okay. Proximity to celestial body is fine. Let's warp forward a little bit here. We're going to be moving pretty quickly as we go by Jool here. No doubt about that. But let's just hop on in here. There we go. We're now in the Joolian system. So the question now becomes, do we have a Tylo interaction? The answer is no, and I'd like to adjust that as soon as possible. We can't create maneuvers while time is paused. That's kind of weird. Okay, whatever. Well, let's just take a look at this maneuver here. We're going to want to adjust our prograde and retrograde for sure. So we're going to need to go a little bit prograde here. No. Retrograde. That's a Tylo interaction there. 7 meters per second. Okay. So let's just think about bringing this in a little bit here. That is not actually adjusting the maneuver node. That closed the maneuver node on us. Okay. To about there or so. I feel like we can definitely bring that in a little bit closer. Bringing it down to, I don't know, maybe like 100 kilometers would be ideal. But this is the best we can do in terms of that. So let's just change our radial a little bit here. That is massively adjusting our inclination, which is not necessarily what we want to do. Okay, let's pull this back. Let's get ourselves a little bit equatorial here. It's not perfect, but it's fairly close to equatorial. That'll do. We'll just call it good here. We should definitely throttle down our engines. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable these 4 engines. We'll re-enable them later. But we'll disable these, and I want to thrust limit this guy down to a mere 1% thrust. Okay, let's get turned to that. And we're going to make that burn in about 8 minutes. It's 8 meters per second. So, or actually this burn is about 8 days away. It's 8 meters per second, and that will be absolutely fine. A lot of gimbaling happening on those engines as we attempt to turn, but we'll reactivate those for our braking burn. We're going to want the thrust to wait. No doubt about that. But we'll see how much fuel we've got once we get this dealt with. Okay, so we're approximately in position for the burn. Let's warp forward the 8 days. We're now about 20 minutes away. Let's warp forward a little further. We're now about 40 seconds away. Much better. 30, 20, and I'm going to come out of the time warp now. We're about 10 seconds away, but I want to zoom us out as much as we can, move us over, and get us into the Tylo SOI. Which apparently is impossible to do right now from that angle. Okay. So 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay. This is going to take a bit. We should probably unthrust limit this. Cool. I'm going to stop that burn. It's almost done, but I don't know where we're at right now. I need to get our camera moved over here. So this is our current position. Actually, that's kind of perfect. 400 kilometers, relatively equatorial. That'll do. Excellent. So next thing that we need to do, of course, is at the periapsis, we need to create a maneuver plan, and that needs to be, I want to know how much DV it's going to take to circularize that. Timing is off. No doubt about that. So we'll change that timing to be, okay, timing is very off. Let's get rid of that, but we now know approximately what that's going to be. Let's warp to here. To our Tylo encounter. Oh, that's very awkward. Very awkward indeed. Let's close that for the time being. Okay, time warp limited due to proximity to celestial body, but what I want to do at this point is just warp to here. Okay, so we're now in the sphere of influence of Tylo, and we can more accurately make a plan on a braking burn here. Now, we're going to have to do this a little more early, for sure. Not much more early, though. Okay, I'm actually going to get rid of that. That's a kilometer per second. That is noted. I want to reactivate these engines, and I want to do that before we make this maneuver, just to make sure that it's, you know, reasonably accurate on how long it's going to take to burn that. A kilometer per second isn't too bad. So we'll create a maneuver plan here. And let's just drop that down to somewhere around that 100-kilometer marker is where I'd like to be. About there. So that'll be fine. Our inclination is definitely imperfect, but it'll do. Let's get aligned for that burn. And yeah, that'll be 1,100 meters per second. I'm thinking that we might want to have another one of these guys out here after we take off, but honestly, I think we might be good on fuel. That's my current suspicion, is that we're good on fuel. Because we know that orbital velocity here is like 2-ish kilometers per second. So that budgets us a good amount of DV. We've got 7K here, so it budgets us about 3,500 for landing and takeoff, which we don't actually need as much for takeoff because we can operate just off of this for takeoff after we get going. So that's reasonably fine. Let's warp forward and get this braking burn done. I'm going to want to circularize it from the other side. Electric charge is looking good, but we can always run a refueling mission if we feel it's necessary. As of right now, my current thinking is that it's not. But we can keep an eye on that. 20 seconds. 10. And 3, 2, 1. Mark. Let's get rid of a lot of this speed. So it's about a 54-second burn, and that'll be absolutely fine. We're going to be entering orbital velocity very shortly here. We're still not captured by Tylo at this time, but this is a pretty decent transfer over, to be honest. I'm a little concerned about DV, but honestly, I think it'll be okay. Cool. So we are officially in orbit of Tylo as of right now. Bringing this right on down. And we're just going to drop our periapsis at that 100-kilometer mark. So we just stay on this maneuver node and keep burning until that periapsis hits that sweet, sweet 100-kilometer mark. It'll flip around reasonably soon. We've still got about 20 seconds left in this burn. In fact, I'm going to take it up to here. It's now flipping. Excellent. So yeah, we're going to have somewhere around 3 kilometers per second for down and up. Should be reasonably okay, especially considering I think we can probably have a positive thrust to weight with just these 3 tanks and just this center engine. I think we can have a positive thrust to weight with that. So that is definitely noted. We'll call this good for now, and let's circularize here. So we'll just bring this guy right on down to about here or so. We'll align for that burn, and turning is reasonably quick, but not the quickest thing in the world. Before we land, we should do, like I said previously, and move all of our fuel down to the bottom tank. We'll do that after this burn, I think. Because we want our ship to be as bottom heavy as possible. That said, we do still have quite a bit of fuel here. This tank is almost empty if we do that, but these two are basically full. Or they are full. If we have it drain that way. And I would definitely prefer to do that. Okay, so we are in position for this burn. Let's warp around. There we go. And we've got about 40 seconds until our braking burn. 30 seconds. 20. 10. And 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay. That'll do. So that puts us in a parking orbit here, and from here, we're going to need to do like an inclination change. We'll need to do some warping for this to come over to the day side. We definitely want to land on the day side, and then we can do a landing burn. The question is one of DV, but I think we're okay on that front. I don't think we need to run a refueling mission, so that should be okay. If we need to, we can always run one out and refuel it, but I really don't think we'll need to. I think we'll be okay. The real question is, after we land, will we have enough to achieve orbit in thrust to weight on just this engine? We'll have a decent amount of thrust to weight to lift us off and get us going, I think. And that's what we really need. So we should be fine, is what I keep coming to. For now, it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to land on Tylo. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy McGar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Tommy Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.